Clara was watching as her husband tried on suits. Finally, he seemed to settle on one and nodded in satisfaction at his reflection. She couldn't hold back any longer. "Where are you going?" He turned. "We have a corporate party. You know how it is, the season opener and all that." "I see. Just employees. What difference does it make to you?" "Well, if spouses are invited, I would have probably gone with you. Why would you go alone when everyone else will be in pairs?" Dennis looked at her for a moment, then burst out laughing. Have you looked at yourself in the mirror lately? You look like a scarecrow. No, a ghost." Before we continue, I'd like to ask you to like this video to help promote it. Thank you. Don't worry, I definitely won't be alone. "Dennis, what are you talking about? I'm your wife, you know that I know." He grabbed her and pulled her to the mirror. Look carefully. Next to me is an old ugly hag. Why would I want such an embarrassment?" Clara couldn't believe her ears. What was he saying? How could he even say such a thing? They had lost a child together. Yes, Dennis hadn't really wanted one, but he had agreed. And she had wanted one so much. Of course, 5 years had passed, but she still couldn't cope with her grief. Dennis had been there for her then, he had tried, he had said that things like that happen, that she shouldn't bury herself alive. But Clara couldn't. Every night she dreamed of her little girl, reaching out her little hands to her, and she knew she was gone. Died during childbirth. They had barely managed to save her. Sometimes Clara thought it would have been better if she had died along with her daughter. Dennis stepped away from her, turned around, looked at her one more time and left. She remained standing in front of the mirror. The dark circles under her eyes, her hair, uncut and undyed for a long time. Even a few gray hairs were visible. Her skin was somehow colorless, and she herself was like a mouse or a moth. "Well, Clara, you lost a child, you lost a husband. What else is there?" "Nothing." She left the room, threw on a jacket and went outside. She walked to the park where she and Dennis had once met, sat on that very bench and sat for a very long time thinking about their life. When they met, Dennis was a simple guy. Clara hadn't told him for a long time that she was from a very wealthy family. They dated on and off, and then in some cafe her friend, so to speak, sold her out. She came up to them, sat down and asked what she was doing there. And from the conversation, from the phrases, Dennis understood everything. Although after 6 years of their life together, after she had gotten to know her husband very well, Clara began to think that he had known everything even without her friend. But she had no proof, of course, only guesses. She got pregnant almost immediately. Clara had always dreamed that when she got married, they would have at least 3 children in their family. Dennis wasn't particularly happy about the pregnancy, but he diligently pretended to be a model family man. Once, however, he told her that she wanted to deprive him of everything. "We've only just started living, we haven't had enough fun. All our friends are going to parties, on trips. And we'll be sitting at home, tied down by an anchor." She had had a real hysterical fit then, was about to call her father, but Dennis quickly calmed her down. He said he had snapped, that he didn't know what had come over him, that he was just worried too. She believed him. And not only believed him but even felt sorry for him. She said that she would let him go out with his friends sometimes, if it was so hard for him. After all, people are different. When her husband told her that the child hadn't made it, she wanted to kill him, didn't want to see him at all. Her parents were on a trip and were only able to come a couple of weeks later. Her mother sat with her for a long time and tried to calm her down somehow, but Clara was in such a state then that she just asked them to go back to their city. Everything that she and Dennis had now was opened and built with her father's money. By the way, Clara hadn't spoken to him for several years, after he had refused to transfer everything to Dennis. She remembered that conversation. Her husband had been dripping on her brain for a long time, and when it became unbearable, Clara called her father. "No, that's out of the question." "What do you mean, Dad? You said yourself that it's all ours. Yours. But if something happens or if your Dennis suddenly decides to marry someone else, let him earn it himself." "Dad, what are you talking about?" "I've said my piece." They had had a very big fight. Dennis hadn't spoken to her either, for almost a month. Clara. She jumped, looked up. Miles. She was not just surprised. She and Miles had known each other since childhood, had always been friends. Nothing like that, no feelings. He was just a good guy. I didn't recognize you at first. What? I look that bad? Miles sat down next to her. You know I've always told you only the truth. So you look terrible. She couldn't help but smile. Yes, Miles was not from their circle of golden youth. He was a hard worker. He always set everything straight. Clara just adored talking to him. She could chat for hours. Did something happen to you? It did. But that's not what's important right now. Could you go to a party with me? Miles's eyes widened. What party? And she briefly told him about how every year the rich and famous organize something like a charity evening, which then turns into a regular corporate party, timed to coincide with the city's day. Do I understand correctly that you want to make your husband jealous? Clara turned to him and said, To be honest, I haven't decided what I want yet. Miles laughed. Now I recognize you. Your adventurous soul just can't rest. Listen, my sister opened a very decent beauty salon in this town. Do you want me to call her? It's late, of course, but she won't refuse me. I'd love to, Miles. You're my savior as always. His sister turned out to be a real magician. God, it had been so long since Clara had felt as if she were being reborn. Money was not an issue, so that same night, they started bringing outfits for her to try on right in the salon. Clara remembered this corporate party from her youth. Everyone who had money came to it. Those who didn't couldn't get in. A long, long time ago, she used to come here with her father, then with Dennis, though only once. And now she was walking next to Miles, who couldn't calm down. I don't understand how this is possible. Just how? Yesterday you looked like a ghost and today you look like a queen. Only you could do that. You almost fooled me. Clara smiled. Come on, calm down. It seems like everyone is already looking at us. You're a man. Miles laughed. Yes, but for some reason I feel strange, as if I'm a weapon of vengeance. Clara fell silent for a second, noticing her husband in the crowd with a young girl hanging on his arm. She gritted her teeth. Miles, you promised me. Everything, don't worry. They sat in the front row, where their family's seats had always been. Less than 5 minutes had passed when the people sitting next to her fell silent. Dennis and his mistress were heading for the same seats. They were chatting sweetly about something, so they didn't immediately notice that the seats were taken. Excuse me, but you... Clara. Dennis looked at her as if she had just risen from the ashes. He quickly shook off the young girl's hand, which caused her to protest loudly. You. What are you doing here? Dennis, don't mumble. I've seen everything I wanted to see. As you understand, these seats belong to our family. And you are no longer a part of our family. Clara, do you want us to discuss everything here and now? Dennis looked around. Everyone was looking at them, they hadn't even started the concert. No, we'll talk later. Dennis moved into the hall. His companion was mincing next to him, constantly saying something to him. He was silent, at least as long as Clara could see him, and the children's concert was beginning on stage. She pulled herself together and turned that way. The first to perform were the youngest children from the orphanage. Honestly, Clara was prepared to cry, because she always cried when she thought of them, and especially when they performed. The children flowed onto the stage in a stream, and Clara suddenly froze. Even Miles felt it. She was looking at the stage, hardly breathing. She had turned as white as a sheet. Miles followed her gaze and also froze. A very small girl was standing sideways to them. On her neck, under her ear, was a large birthmark. And this birthmark was exactly the same as Clara's. Miles called Dad. Urgently. Clara. I said, call him. She jumped up and ran backstage. Mrs. Evans, I don't understand what you want from me. The caregiver was nervously wringing her hands. Clara, as clearly as possible, said, Where did the girl with the large birthmark on her neck come from in the orphanage? I don't know, honestly. I've only been working here for 2 years, preparing the children for concerts. Who knows? Well, maybe the director. Get her here. But Clara looked at her in such a way that the girl immediately grabbed her phone. She approached the child. The girl's name was Sonia, and the little girl was looking at her with interest. You're pretty. Clara smiled. This just couldn't be, but the girl was a complete copy of her in childhood. Absurd. Maybe she was going crazy. Maybe it was all just her imagination. But now Dad would come and sort everything out. If Clara really had something wrong with her head, then he would send her for treatment, and no amount of pleading would help. And if not, Dad would bury everyone. Clara, Mr. Peterson said he'll be here in about 15 minutes. Did you know he was in town? Of course. The fact that we're not speaking doesn't mean we don't know anything about each other. Miles, who does she look like? He looked at the girl, then at her and whistled. I don't understand anything anymore. Clara sighed. So I haven't gone mad. Then what does this mean? Someone set this all up? Someone took my child from me and gave the girl to an orphanage? Miles, does that even happen? Something flashed in Miles's eyes, and he rushed away from them. Clara shrugged. She needed to somehow inform Dennis that a monstrous thing had happened, and that their child was actually alive. Or not. Clara realized that she was starting to go crazy. If only Dad would come sooner. Daughter, what happened? Clara. She pressed her finger to her lips so that Dad wouldn't shout so loudly. The girl had long since moved to her lap and was dozing. The children had left with another caregiver, and the girl whom Clara had so frightened was patiently waiting for the director. Mr. Peterson looked closely at the child and turned as white as a sheet. But this can't be. At that moment, Miles literally dragged Dennis in. What do you want from me, huh? Let me go. I want to introduce you to someone. To your daughter. No, I don't have a daughter, you idiot. I'm a free man. I do what I want. At that moment, the director of the orphanage came in. What's going on? Sonia, are you all right? It took about 30 minutes to explain everything to her. Finally, when she understood what was going on, she nodded. Yes, I remember how Sonia appeared. A young man dropped her off with us. We had just installed cameras that morning, and I have the video recording saved. We can go and watch it. It's not exactly legal, but purely from a human point of view, I understand you. No one saw or noticed how Dennis disappeared. They realized it too late. Miles wanted to run and look for him, but Mr. Peterson stopped him. No need. He won't get far. It was Dennis on the video in a black jacket with a hood, but everyone recognized him immediately. Clara fainted. She came to in the hospital. She wanted to run, but her mother stopped her. Quiet, Clara, quiet. Everything will be fine now. But Sonia needs you healthy, not with a stroke. She's with her grandfather, so everything is fine. Mom, where's Miles? I hope he hasn't done anything foolish. Too late. Miles, by the way, turned out to be very restrained. He didn't let her father carry out vigilante justice. So now your husband and his assistants are giving testimony at the police station. Mom, I want to see her, please. A month passed. Even with their connections and money, they couldn't resolve the paperwork any faster. Sonia, of course, was living with them. Clara immediately declared that she would not give her child to anyone, and that was not even up for discussion. And if necessary, she would live in the orphanage herself. What her father and Miles were talking about didn't concern her at all. When they finally got the papers, they decided to celebrate it at a family restaurant. Well, Clara, call him, I'm going. Anna looked at Miles in surprise. Where are you going? Well, you're having a family dinner. And you? Aren't you a part of our family? No, Miles, I'm not letting you go anywhere. He looked at her attentively. And you know, I might just want to stay in your family. For good. Clara smiled. You know, I was considering that option and I really liked it. For some reason, it seems to me that my parents and Sonia will be all for it. And 3 months later, in that very same restaurant, their wedding was in full swing, which Dennis found out about in a place not so far away. If you like the story, please support me with a subscribe button. It's just one click, but for me it's very important. Thank you. Stay with us.